the office manager, the secretary, and I was super nice to her. I said, hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. I see nobody else is here. She like, yes, it's summertime. I'm like, are you the only one here? She was like, yeah. I was like, is this all like your whole summer? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, it got to get boring, right? I'm just striking a conversation. Yeah. This is the first lady I've seen in the school. So we have a real nice conversation. And she said, I'm going to make sure that your resume gets to the right hands. So fast forward, they call me. I end up at the other school. I have my interview. Interview goes great. The office manager, the secretary, and I was super nice to her. I said, hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. I see nobody else is here. She like, yes, it's summertime. I'm like, are you the only one here? She was like, yeah. I was like, is this all like your whole summer? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, it got to get boring, right? I'm just striking a conversation. Yeah. This is the first lady I've seen in this school. So we have a real nice conversation. And she said, I'm going to make sure that your resume gets to the right hands. So fast forward, they call me. I end up at the other school. I have my interview. Interview goes great. But even though I did my research for the other school and I landed at a different school, my research was still valuable because I was able to ask the right questions. Hey, I noticed on the website that your principals have only been here for about 2 years. Why is that? And then they can tell me, oh, this is actually a turnaround school. And I'm like, oh, I actually heard about turnaround schools. Is that the reason why this is a charter? Was it a public school before? It's almost like being a lawyer. You ask questions about things you already know the answer to, but they know based off of the way you ask it.
Yeah, and then that's beautiful because you become a part of their ecosystem. Went from a total stranger out of nowhere to this is our guy. Oh, Shawn, that's our man. He's basically family now, right? So even when you go into the job, it's a little more smoother because you also have somebody that's inside the organization. Zora said, shout out to Zora, our office manager always tells me how people treat her when she passes a resume along, and it impacts my interaction with them. Yeah, see, 100%, right? That's gold right there because everything you do is a part of your interaction, right? Everything, even including social media. So one of the things that we talked about when you were doing the research and you were looking up people and checking things out, it was one of those things where I was like, for me, I look up my interviewers potentially on social media. I look up the bosses on social media. I look them up on LinkedIn. Sometimes I get a little brave and I add them on LinkedIn just to see what they're talking about. Because if you sharp and they sharp, you got to figure out, hey, what type of individual are you working with? Because LinkedIn is very telling, right? Because you have the people that actually interact on LinkedIn. When you find somebody interacting on LinkedIn, it'll show what things they've commented on LinkedIn. And so I go in there and I'm like, okay, so the boss he's interested in some new plant technology that's going to change the wave, that's going to do all those things. I'm like, okay, he commented on that. He was praising these people. I even looked up, I think they wrote an article or he was in an interview or whatnot for this latest job that I had. But I also found out that he was prior service. I knew that kind of through the interviewing company, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it, right? But then as I was reading, I found out that he was a Black Hawk pilot. And in one of my previous military jobs, I was on a battalion staff. I was a chemical officer, but I had to come up with react to chemical attack plans for those pilots. So I could speak to speak, right? I could talk to talk. I could walk to walk with them because they understood that I was bought into the culture. And it got to a point where I tapped into new company ventures. I found out that they were looking to convert their steam into energy in the plant. And so as we were walking through the conversation, I get excited, so I have to bring myself down. But as we were walking through the conversation, I was like, okay, that new STEAM initiative that you guys have that I looked up. And I started asking little intricacies. Okay, how's that rollout going? Are there any issues with that rollout plan? And because I also had a background in root cause analysis and process improvement. So when they start giving you those pieces of information, and this was a phone interview, was actually halfway around the world. I was in Africa at the time on a phone interview. But during that time, I was doing some different body language things, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's very important to greet those people, interact with those people as if they're your coworkers already. Not lax, professional. Smiling, nodding, keeping it basic.